Sorry. I have a couple of stuffed animals, which I will be torturing over the presentation. This is a Baloo, because I need the virtual audience. We have like 1 minute before the start. And this guy, and please just like try to keep it calm because something really like scary is coming. This one is called Tubaj. It's a dangerous shark. I scare my kids during the night at 3 a.m. I wake them up and I throw the stuffed animals at them. It's just like it's a Portuguese tradition. Just take it serious.
Just a family advice. We don't sponsor that message. Okay.
Yeah, we don't sponsor that. But it has to have freaking lasers. Okay, you didn't sponsor? I mean, my bank account, man, come on. God. Okay, good. Let's see if we can start the presentation. I hope everybody is having a great 25th of April. And if it's not the 25th of April, well, I hope you're having a good time anyway. So that's my presentation. Tiago, how does it look like?
It looks like awesome. I love that picture.
So welcome to the virtual global Azure Lisbon on Saturday, 25th of April of 2020.
It's in the logo. We don't need that.
Okay, sorry. My name is Niko Neugebauer, and the session name is on other slides, I was told. Smiley. So, first of all, it's the European Cloud Summit, Microsoft Azure, Artificial Intelligence, Industry 4.0, Cloud Architecture, Cloud Management, Cloud Development, Hybrid, Multi-Cloud, whatever else is cloud. It's on October 20 to 22nd, online, most probably, Tiago. Who knows? But please join them. It must be a great event. Tiago, you will be there. Who else?
I will be there, and Adis will be there. He's one of the main organizers. Spencer will be there, and I'm just doing this so that I can open the website and see who else is there.
Everybody, you should be there.
Mustafa will be there.
Mustafa. Okay.
Well, other guys will be there. Yeah. Okay. Very smart people.
Yes. And you can be smart as well if you join them. All right? So it seems like I'm 2 minutes late. Let's start the show. So as I told you, my name is Niko Neugebauer.
Sorry, I can't do that right now.
I know, Siri. So I describe myself as a data professional, which means I work with data. What do? I do whatever my boss asks me to, and my clients require me to, and blah, 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 whatever. I do present a couple of times per year, so to say. And, since we will be talking about Azure Synapse Analytics, formerly SQL DW, there is a cool feature in SQL DW, which I kind of like love, enjoy, whatever. Really, which is called column store indexes. I kind of like blog regularly about them. That's about it. Okay, so today's agenda, very small. We will not make it through as always because I have 90 minutes, Tiago, right? Thank you.
You have until 12.
Until 12. By which time zone? Okay, so introduction, first of all, right? Then, besides the introduction, we will have a statistics management. Then we'll see some cool T-SQL. Then we'll take a look at some feature I absolutely love, which is called Create Table As. It exists like since forever, not on regular Azure SQL database, not on SQL Server, but I think like it's worth mentioning because I want to pressure the other teams working on Azure SQL database in order for them to implement this feature as well. Then very, very, very cool kid on the block, copy into table. It might look like a feature you already know, like nothing special, but there are so many special details about it. it's worth mentioning. Or column store indexes. This is like booyakasha of the performance. That's the moment when the Redshift guys can stop saying that they can do a better job because their keys are sorted. I mean, we won't talk about the shortcomings of the other platforms, like they cannot push the predicates down, they cannot like filter decisively into their views, but whatever. It's a feature I have been asking since 2012 at least. Still asking. We'll talk about the materialized views. I mean, I can go, Tiago, can I make a presentation just on the agenda? I'll make an agenda and then we'll finish the presentation. No. Okay.
No.
Thank you, Tiago. Tiago is stepping. Okay, then we'll talk about result set caching, and of course, that's probably the most serious part of this presentation. Besides this guy who is looking at you right now, you know. So we will talk about the query identification and workload isolation. Have you ever worked with the Synapse Analytics with SQL DW, and you notice like, oh, I'm scaling, but I'm not getting right the performance I need? It's because some small details by default, which are pretty much, once you understand they make so much sense, and you can get a superpower once you understand how it works. So I'm talking about the existing and the newest features. A lot of stuff I will be talking is totally in preview. It's not ready to be used in production. You should be testing. You should be giving the feedback to the Microsoft on those features. You might be blogging, you might be presenting, but you know, if you run this in production and you expect all of this to work, well, might be surprised or not. So, woohoo! Evolving SQL DW. Raise your hand if you have ever used Azure SQL DW. I just see one hand. Let me switch to the, to the Teams, and I can see that. Okay, I see 1.5 hands, 2 hands. Virgilio, you have a very beautiful hand. Just saying, man. I love you so much. Yeah. Love is in the air. Okay, I need to find my presentation. So, formerly, before like whatever, 8 months ago, it was a SQL DW. Now it's Synapse Analytics. Some people go and say like, well, Microsoft kind of like, they're doing their usual bullshit. I said the word bullshit. Yes, it is. So that's not a real bullshit. I'm sorry to disappoint all of the skeptics this time. There are a lot of extremely cool features, and Synapse is much more than just the relational part I will be focusing my presentation on. It's basically a cohesive cross-platform as a service offerings in order to give you a full experience of working on a full-fledged solution for your data warehouse, for your modern data warehouse. So one key things I need to mention right at the beginning, right now, even the wording started changing in the last 2-3 weeks on the documentation. You will hear a lot of time the words SQL pool and SQL serverless. So SQL pool is what we used to know as a SQL DW. It's a good old relational stuff, and the stuff you can use as a poly base. You can read the data from the storage, different kinds of storage, blah, blah, blah. You can run the analytical queries. The other part is, which is kind of like the exact naming, I'm not sure, but I think it's like Azure Synapse SQL Serverless. Is that where the part you can run the different queries without paying a fixed price for the tier of the SQL DW. You run them ad hoc, and you will be charged on the consumption. So I'm not talking about this Azure Synapse SQL Serverless or SQL Server More. depending on your experience. I'm talking about the elder part, the relational part, the part which, from one side, all of you know how it works. All of you know SQL or not so SQL fanboys and girls think it sucks. So let's dive into it. If you have any questions, I know Tiago will not let me fall asleep, right, Tiago? Or Virgilio or Vivian or whoever controls me or should be trying to control me because I'm not in control. And they will be asking your questions. So let's take a look at this Azure Synapse statistics. Why did I put this part into the presentation, you might ask? Like, well, there was nothing, whatever. If you use Azure SQL DW for years, or if you have ever worked with MPP, massive parallel processing offering from Microsoft, which is over 10 years, which was called, what was it called? I don't even remember right now at Hawk, the MPP on-premises offering. What was it called? Parallel Data Warehouse. So you would know if you worked with any of them in the last decade that you would have to work with statistics manually. It should be very, very important way of tuning, because every time you update your table, you will potentially get a statistics update if you started querying it right away. So a lot of times a practice, like since forever, before doing ETL or ELT load, you disable this automated statistics update. You load the data, and then you do just one, instead after each operation, just one statistics update. But for a lot of people, the manual gears and switches, it's a difficult thing. So automated statistics update. If you ever work with SQL Server or any relational database, this is like easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? Like, this is relatively new thing for the Synapse Analytics. This is cool stuff. This is what a lot of people have been waiting. So the auto-update statistics asynchronously, and auto-create statistics. Because, people would forget that they need statistics, and Synapse, before the recent times, were not allowing the auto creation. So it's a cool feature to start this presentation. So just don't forget, data warehousing is different from LTP, and if you want a real performance, you might be disabling auto update in some cases. I'm not recommending oh, you're different, just disable, try it out. Learn this stuff, how it works. The technologies change, they evolve, blah, blah, as we say in Portugal, blah, blah, whiskas saquetas, but the basics are still there. Learn them. And don't think about data warehousing. Don't put your web app on Synapse Analytics. You will be disappointed in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. This is for different, bigger amounts of data. This is a different solution. So, I'll give you a tip. I will be talking about this later if I have time. But you do not, when you create a user, don't think that this user have the best rights or best access to the resources, has the smallest access to the resources, which means you're doing ETL with your default user. Well, breaking news, you're doing it wrong. So upgrade your user, create a new user, of course. Don't use the default user you created by the portal or PowerShell or CLI, whatever resource you're using. Just don't start with a small resource class. It will be painful. I promise. I guarantee. So more parallel processes and blah, 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 blah. Okay. No questions, I know, because nobody wants to ask anything at this point. There is nothing new for you. let's see a couple of cool T-SQL features in Azure Synapse Analytics. So T-SQL is the language that is used across different relational platform offerings from Microsoft. SQL Server, Azure SQL Database, whatever flavor it is it hyperscale managed instance, it's all T-SQL. It's all awesome, beautiful, marvelous. So 3 features just for you. Just a little bit of taste. Compression. How do you enable compression? You can create a table, whatever the table, and you just write the words with, and you don't even have to specify the name. You don't have to specify the keywords, data compression, underscore compression. And you put, you want to use a heap, you want to use a traditional B-tree index, or as by default, you want to use a clustered column store index on your table. This is so sweet. Trust me, sometimes you create a complex solution with T-SQL, and sometimes even for data warehouse, you create a complex solution, and you do not want to mess with the name of the constraints because you honestly don't care. You just want it to work. And this is kind of a little feature which I absolutely love. Partitioning. Have you ever used partitioning? If you're working with more than 100 million of rows in the table, you should. You must have been using partitioning. Anybody work with the partitioning here? It's a silence. Just the bear crossing by. Nobody. Good. I will imagine that you did. So you know that you need to create a partitioning function. You need to create a partitioning schema. You need to create the layout for the file groups and the data files. And then by the creation of the table, you need to use your column in order to partition it. And if you want to split it, that's a pain in the neck. I'm just, it's a neck. Exactly, this part, the neck. So in Synapse Analytics, you create a table, you write with partition, and you list the partitioning. Of course, you specify if it's range right or range left for the values, but it's you can create this so easily. It's incredible. If you have ever worked with the partitioning, and you never saw a Synapse Analytics, your eyes must be the tears are falling down your face. I want this everywhere, right now, right away. And the third one, it's specifics, very things specific to the architecture of the Synapse, because as you must have heard, Synapse Analytics is using from 1 to up to 60 different nodes in the background, depending on the tier that you are using. And if you're using an expensive tier, besides getting more nodes, you are also paying more money. So when you create a table on Azure SQL DW, you can specify the distribution. You can use a round robin, which basically imagine that you have with this beautiful 60 nodes within 60 sub-servers, nodes for your Synapse Analytics. So if you set the round robin, it will evenly distribute the data between each node. So the first row will go to the first node, the second to the second. It reaches this 60 rows, the 61st row will go into the first. So it will do a beautiful job. You can also use a hashing algorithm, which is pretty good on the hash collision. I never heard people complaining about in order to distribute that. And then you can use a replicate. Basically, you create a copy of the table on each of the nodes, 60 copies, up to 60 copies. Are they insane? You might ask. No, they're not. It's a common solution. Any other MPP solution uses this. Imagine you using something might be a strange word, like a dimension table. But it's a satellite help table which you want to apply to very big calculations, and you do not want to spread this table over way too many nodes. You want to have a local copy on every node, and then you would use a word replicate. Would it be cool if we would have something like this on a basic relational database? Yeah. Anyway, any questions so far?
No, not yet. I was just helping some with some issues.
All right.
Questions for now.
Feel free to try to interrupt me.
Yes, I will.
All right. So CTAS, my favorite feature. I tell you something I should not. I was promised this feature to be in the regular relational database by somebody. She will not watch this presentation ever, but every time I see her, every time in public, I will remind her that we're still waiting. So you can create a table, like create table, you can define it, whatever you're using, and create table as, and then operation. This is like, CTAS has been like, I remember using it on Oracle, I think like 18 years ago. This is a basic feature for data warehousing, for using an analytics solution like everywhere. And Microsoft has it for PTW, for Synapse, for all the previous evolution of the Synapse Analytics for well over 10 years. But for some reason, they never put it into regular databases. So you might ask yourself, like, why would this feature be so cool? Because, well, let's consider this. If you can do select into, that will create the table pretty much like you wish, right? So, but you will not have the possibility of defining the properties of the table. And that's a pretty big thing. If you are, if you're running a couple of hours long query, you want it to get it right from the first thing, because you have like 6 or 7 hours to do your ETL during the night before you will give this wonderful information to the consumption of the end users. So switching gears, and I can show you something which is woohoo, Azure Data Studio, or something like that it's called. So I can go here on my database, which is called Synapse, and I just run those queries, and you can see the syntax I'm running. I can basically select all the columns from the DIM account, but I can change the distribution, or I can change the compression, or any other properties that are supported. And here we go. I've just created my new table, which is called DBO new DIM account with some data. I know, 99 balloons or 99 rows. That's as far as we go in this demo. I have a demo which is running like for a couple of hours with 500 million rows. We will not be doing this during the rest of the 36-7 minutes that we have left. But what I mean that you can select the stuff the way you want. You can, through the regular expressions, through the expressions, you can even control if the properties of the columns you are creating in new table, they will be nullable or not, blah, blah, blah. It's just like, do whatever you want. It's easy. You want this column, beautiful. You do not want it, just delete it, nobody cares. Unless your users need it, then they will care. That's just like a little details, okay? Any question on CTAS? It's a very old feature. Some people still have no idea about this. I love it. Please push the Microsoft to put it everywhere else. It's very much needed. No questions? Okay, good.
I completely agree with you, Niko. We should have this on the regular SQL database.
It just like I was promised this feature would come into SQL database one day, hopefully. All right, next one, copying data into a table. What? You're like, Niko, you're spending our precious time on Saturday talking about this? Oh, yes, I do. Oh, yes, I do. So, blah, blah, blah. How do you copy the data? You can use insert into select from. All of you should know this feature. You can use select into from T-SQL syntaxes that you also just heard when I'm talking about the create table as select, this one. You can use the polybase. It's a very, very wonderful feature that Synapse possesses that allows you to create a table on the Azure Blob storage or on all supported other types of storages like ADLS v2. And you can present this structure of the data of the file system as an external table. Beautiful stuff. You can use the good old bulk copy, BCP, or you can use the open role set bulk insert, right? Who remembers, I mean, for 5 points, 5 Azure points, you can answer to yourself or in the chat all the necessary properties and permissions that you need to apply to use those features. I can tell you just a little story that once I had to rewrite the architecture because those wonderful open row set and bulk insert, they just wanted the sysadmin on the Azure SQL database. That was really funny. Not really. So back to the copy into. It's a brand new command which allows you have very, very neat privileges, controllable, not very high privileges. It's kind of like, you'll see right now the syntax is, it's kind of a bulk insert, but it lowers the security and it does a little bit more, just a little bit more, which is absolutely cool. So copy into, you can use right now, because I'm pretty much confident that it will grow with the time. You can use not just CSV, but you can use the Parquet and Orcs. These are 2 column store formats, open source, used by the big data solutions to store the information. So if you look at any modern offerings, you will basically hit the wall if you're not using Parquet or Orcs. So how do you do this? You define the, declare the table, and then you can use copy into and from BCP, you know, you recognize it file type, you can go with Parquet or Orc, as I said. You need to put your credential with your SAS token, and then you use all the, you know, all the stuff you already know, encoding, format, maximum number of errors, identity insert is existing or not, blah, blah. But there are a couple of cool things I want to tell you about. That when you are specifying the path, you can use multiple sources, which means that you can use from, you can put a comma and put a different source, like from 2 sources into 1 table. Woohoo! Sounds cool? No, it's not. Because actually, you can use a wildcard expressions, buddy people. So it's like Azure Data Factory wildcard path. So you can put 1 wildcard or multiple wildcard for the recursive, and you can say, you know what? I have a very deep structure under this folder on this container, on this blob storage, and just go in, find all the TXT, all the Parquet files, and put them into my table. I don't give a damn. And that's like, this kills ADF usage for some primitive cases. So if you know the ADF copy table functionality, basically that's like a very similar feature, okay? Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. It's in preview. It should be coming out of preview, hopefully soon. So 2 demos for you, secret, nobody cares. I can create a table, which I call air travel. I have here some CSV file. I think I have already like tested yesterday and it works. Yeah, so let's drop the table, let's recreate it. In the meantime, please fire away your questions, if you have any. It's trivial, I know. And right now, the demo god's basically like, yeah. So I create a table, and right now I will copy this information from this CSV file right into my table. It took me 1.7 seconds, and here you go. I've got all the CSV data, and I can control this permission. This is wonderful, because I can do like this. This is what I was saying, okay? Will it work? I didn't test it. Oh, wonderful. You see? And if I would put multiple CSV files, I would copy them all. Of course, they would give an error if they're not properly shaped, blah, blah. But you can do whatsoever. You can do something like this. Or you can do something like 2020 to 04. And you can copy the data from today, or you can copy the data from all the days in April, or in the year, or that are destined for Synapse Analytics. Wonderful, beautiful, marvelous, to say at least. The same thing is I'm using here for Parquet file. That's some random Parquet file, actually in a different storage account. I put some Parquet data, and I can basically, using the share access signature, I can copy it over into my table. Wonderful. But Louis agrees, and Tubas says yes, he agrees as well. Any questions?
Not for now, but this is a very, very cool feature. I liked so much.
It's basically when people are having no questions, there are 2 possibilities. One of them, they understand and they agree. And the other one, they have like no freaking clue, and they're like, oh, yeah.
So they are understanding. Yeah.
I'm talking about 3 other people who are on this presentation. Okay, so now to the smallest part, the column store indexes in Azure Synapse Analytics. I'll give you a little preview in order for you to understand, because otherwise that's pretty deep feature that is already available, and more are coming for the column store indexes. And I just want to make sure you understand. So the traditional indexes for, yeah.
Let me interrupt you a little. We have a question here. Can you copy directly into a column store index?
If I can what?
Can you copy direct into a column store index?
Of course. You can copy into any table. It's a copy. It's similar to a BCP process. So if it's a page, if it's a heap, if it's a column store, where it lands in the column store, that's a different thing. In order to remind you, you need at least 102,000 102,400 rows times 60. You'll go there, y times 60, in order to get down into the compressed row groups. But, you know, more questions?
More questions, and there are some that are mentioned that they are in the first group and others in the second.
Sorry, what?
Because you asked that there are two groups, and so some attendees are mentioning that some are in the first group. And
Okay, okay. Okay,
you can take them.
Vivian, I suggest you do the analytics on what is the percentage people in which group.
50-50 for now.
Okay, 50-50. I'm doing great. I'm just like any positive number above 0. I'm already winning this stuff. Okay, so column store indexes. These, if you create a table and you're not specifying anything on Synapse Analytics, you are using the column store indexes by default. Very awesome. So what is the difference? The row store are traditional, like SQL Server, Azure SQL Database tables, if you don't specify anything. So if you create a clustered index, which means includes all the columns, and you include all the columns, so you will store them all together, the values of each column, all together on the storage level. For the column store index, you do not horizontal, not row storage, you do the columnar storage. So values of each column will be stored together. The huge advantage is the values within the same column, they are repetitive. And they're very similar, and they have the same data type. Unless you're using SQL variant, but then you're crazy. Don't talk to me ever. Like SQL variant, just like, you know where the exit is. Never talk to me. Just kidding. So columnar is basically vertical values, all separated. Internally, they're glued together through some internal information, okay? The advantage is when you need just the first name, you read the structure for the first name. When you need the first name and the salary, you just read them. Beautiful. Their column store are incredibly awesome for reading huge amounts of information. They're suck for the update operation or merge operation. They really like nothing else. Oh God. We'll see how it goes. Not the presentation. I'm just thinking about the future. So row store, traditional, they have their advantages. Column store, they have their advantages. It's writing into the column store is not exactly an advantage. They're not designed for good writings. They have their advantages when you're loading like hundreds or gazillions of millions of rows of information at the same time. But just, it's like with every great power comes great responsibility, you know the drill, the stuff, the Superman, the Spider-Man. So what happens? Why do I talk about this? It matters. It matters just in 5 minutes. So how do you create the column store? You separate the row groups because all the information are grouped in around 1 million rows, and they create like a physical separation for this. Like I have this here a table with 4 columns and 4 million rows. I will get this physical cuts, like internal partitioning of 4 row groups with each one of around 1 million rows. For those of you who really understand this stuff, yeah, it's more complicated than this. I kind of know, but we're just simplifying. So then we'll get something which is called the segment. Segment corresponds to the value for one particular column for one particular row group. So if I have 4 million rows and 4 columns, I will get 4 times 4 segments, meaning 16. If I have 10 million rows and 4 columns, I will get at least 40 segments, like multiplication. And then there'll be like a shuffling of the data, blah, blah. reordering of the data, and the segments, each one will be compressed in a different way, depending on the data type, blah, blah, blah. Why do I tell you this? Because I'll skip this, just, slides will be available. All of you who are into the internals can read this stuff and blah, 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 memory broker. I want to talk about the segment elimination. This is the key thing in order to get the performance, the real performance. And if we're talking about the Synapse Analytics, we're talking a lot of times of gazillions, billions, large billions of rows, because it's like, if you have 10 million rows, don't go into Synapse Analytics. You're not having a big data problem. That's 10 million rows in modern times, that's a small table. It's like, not really small, but it's just, you don't talk to people like, I have 10 million rows in my table. Like, everybody will say like, yes, that's a dimension table. Like, we're glad for you. So do you see the query? We do the sum of C2, C3 from whatever the table, and we have a predicate. C2 is between 10 and 20, right? So do we need the column C1? No, because there is no mention of it. Do we need the C2? Yes, we do the sum, we filter on it. Do we need a C3? Yes, we sum on it. Do we need a C4? No, we don't. So column store indexes automatically will eliminate and will read just the relevant information. It's an amazing partitioning, like wonderful. But there is one little caveat. So each segment stores the minimum and the maximum values stored within this segment. So I can use the predicate to eliminate the whole row group based on this criteria. So do I need the first row group? No, because I need the values between 10 and 20. Do I need the second row group? Oh yeah, 10 and 20, that's perfect. 15 and 30, about the third. Why is it not ordered? Because the key property of the column store indexes is that they're never ordered. If you do a rebuild of the table and you have at least 4 times the value of 1 and 45, you can get 145, 145, 145, 145. It will depend on sorting algorithm of the Vertipack algorithm, which is internal, will never be documented. Don't dream about it. You cannot easily control it. So it will sort for you as it wishes. But between 15 and 30, it overlaps. So it fits. We need to process it. We need to search. Maybe there are values which correspond to our expectation. 3145? No. Pumbaa, or as I say, booyakasha. Before we started processing the query, we just eliminated 75% of the information. Key thing here, would it be awesome if we would be able to sort the data, sort and try to guarantee that the data on the columns we are most frequently use in our analytical queries, or we use for the extraction or for joins, it is sorted. These have been a request, or as in Microsoft language is ask, for many years. And I'm just jumping here. Here it is, baby. This only on Synapse Analytics, you can specify the ordering. When you create a column store index and you rebuild it, you can put an order feature and you can sort the information. I know it costs more time, but it's absolutely incredible, because I used to joke with people like, my column store indexes runs faster than yours. And it's true, because I know how to design them, but I can tune them for the workload. And it's like, how can one table perform better than the other table if they have the same data? And we are talking about the queries which can run for long hours. And if I can win an extra hour, I can, I will develop faster. I will test faster. I will be more able to finish my work on time. This is like performance is the key. You know, read the Dr. Kimball, you know, the Bible, the Data Warehouse Toolkit, please. So this is a killer feature, absolutely killer feature. So how do you do this? I'm not going to the demo, I'm sorry, but I will give the files scripts for you to test. So 500 million rows, it's a little bit more than 500, but I use the maximum number of rows per row group. You load the data, you create the clustered column story index, and then you use a simple query, which will extract the minimum and the maximum data within it. And so just a word of warning, as you can see, here is huge overlap between 1 and 104 million, and then 2049. It's basically, they're all overlapping, which creates this kind of picture. As you can see, depending on the segment, this is the area which the values can potentially occupy. So if I'm filtering on 100 million on the value, I will need to process this, and this segment. All I want is to have those two lines be totally aligned, perfectly aligned. And you can do that. The key is change your default user, because it uses a small resource class. It gives very, very small amount of memory. Change it to large or X large RC and scale up your Azure Synapse Analytics tier, because on the basic tier, you don't have enough memory to execute the sort operation. These details, it's basically like, I would go and try and fail, and I worked even with the program manager on while I was testing this feature on getting it right. Situation would not change, and then I would get this. You see? And if I ran a query on the value of 100 million, I would need to read just one segment. And that's if you multiply these 8 segments by 8,000, you understand that your query will function in absolutely distinctly unique way. So actually, I do this since 2012. There is a technique, I've been talking about this for the last 5-6 years. It's very, very easy. Yes.
Before to move on, we have a question here.
Yeah.
From Fernando. Will this order feature be available also on SQL database?
Let's pray. I hope yes. I'm pushing for this very seriously. Let's don't forget that all the code between the SQL DW, the Synapse, and SQL database is the same. It's just the features. They work in a different way because it's a multi-parallel processing. It's like 60 nodes or just one node, different architecture, but the code is the same. They can make it work. There is a magic on 2019, and that's, I'm just ask Microsoft, ask, don't stop, help us all. But just what I wanted to show. So if I will create a user and I give him the large RC or extra large RC resource class, we'll look into the resource classes in just a couple of minutes. I will start improving, and eventually I will get this thing. So I was mentioning there is a technique to get it functioning right now on any SQL Server, Azure SQL Database, Hyperscale, Synapse Analytics. If you create a sorted or row store traditional index, already pre-sorted on the columns you want the column store to be sorted, and as the next operation, you will create the column store index with max DOP1, disabling all the parallelism, because it will shuffle the information in the wrong way, in the wrong, not expected way. you will get the same result. So this is what I'm already doing. But the thing is, how much do I pay for this? So I ran the test, and let's say 46 minutes is creating an unordered column store. If I use the SQL DW feature, it takes me just 62 minutes, just a little bit more, a little bit. It's just, you pay a quarter extra time to get wonderful performance. But if you use old style, you go nuts. You go almost double of the traditional ordered column store. And because it's the internal implementation is so effective and it's being continuously tuned, it's getting even closer to unordered column store. So it's kind of, you can have this picture right now, but you pay this, the old style. But you can do it like this, and you do not, and there are risks with this associated. If the transaction fails, you can be in a certain undesirable state, blah, 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 whiskas saquetas. So it's kind of like, this is the coolest feature ever. I'm begging for this for like 8 years, hopefully soon. But Synapse gives you it right away. It's still in preview. Try it out, give the feedback. Microsoft will thank you, and everybody else, including me, will thank you as well. Any questions?
Not for now.
Good. Materialized views. I'm running slow on time, and I will not show you the demos, but I will just talk through the rest of the stuff. So materialized views. You must have heard like index views, blah, blah. You can create a view which is materialized, which is a kind of like an actual physical table. So on Synapse, there never been an index view ever, but it is existing now. It's a wonderful feature. So you can create the view with with the following syntax: create materialized view. You can specify the distribution, whatever, round robin, replicate. You specify for append if you're using one of the more advanced operational like Max, and then you create this syntax. So I'm jumping DMVs, but it's basically the internal information is available. You can analyze the views. You can see all the mappings. Beautiful, wonderful work. So I'll break my promise and I'll just show you this. So materialized view. Imagine I have a query here. Basic query, I do 1, 2, 3 joins, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's one of the key things that you drop the view, but you create materialized view. So let's see the query. It's a query which takes I think 3 seconds or something. 2 seconds something it took me, 2.7 seconds. Okay, so I'll run it again. It took me 2.5 seconds. I want this one. Imagine these are minutes. I can create this materialized view for this query. It's basically like a result for this. And if I rerun this query, and you can parameterize it, it's like I don't have to specify the gender or the country. I can do the more higher interaction. But when I ran the query, I went down to 0.3 seconds because this view already pre-caches the necessary information. I cannot tell you the number of successes I had with the index user materialized views. Tricky stuff, but wonderful. This feature has been missing from Synapse for ages. This one for querying is a killer, especially because it supports min, max, and average. Try it on your index use babies. You will cry. Okay, you can do a lot of operation there, and one of the most awesome thing about this is when you run something like calculations on a query, the syntax for viewing the execution plan, and I cannot view it, unfortunately, in the Azure Data Studio right now, only in Management Studio, but hopefully it will get corrected. If I run any query, this is absolutely awesome because for the performance tuning, and I hope there will be more information internally. So if I run the command explain with recommendation and I copy this, the engine itself, I know you like XML, but I like it too. So just bear with me. It gives you information. You know what? Your query is Materialized View candidate. And it gives me the code, complete code on how to make my query run faster. You see? This is like Booyakasha, my friends. This is like Ali G in the house. This is the wrong word, as select, of course. So the functionality of explain, you can view the execution plans, the estimated execution plans, and explain with recommendation will recommend you the materialized views. This is wonderful, marvelous, okay? I'm like in the half of my presentation. Can I do it for 1 more hour? Yes, thank you, Vivian, thank you.
No.
The silence, it means you agree with me.
More 5 minutes.
I think like 4, but oh well. So 4 hours, I mean. Okay, you can use this one. I love the length of the command. And if you are updating the materialized views or underlying the tables and using Max, you can then do the DBCC PDW, Parallel Data Warehouse, show materialized view overhead, and then rebuild your materialized view. It means like wonderful feature, but you will need to do a manual maintenance on it. Another one, result set caching. So maybe you have worked with the previous MySQL or Postgres or Oracle. Some of this, so old MySQL had this result set caching feature. Basically, I'm diving a little bit into the internals. You have the control node, you have the compute nodes. The control node, it can store up to almost 1 terabyte on the local, 1 terabyte of information on the local SSD. So once you enable the result set caching, you will, when you send the query to the data warehouse, query is processed, blah, blah, you gave the results, and you store it locally. You store it on the control node, the results. And the next time you invoke the same query, and the engine knows that the underlying data has not been changed, it will just return to you the result instantly. So this is like, if you are doing the traditional ETL and you have a stop moment when you stopped preparing the data and you just consume it, this is basic data warehouse history. You switch on result set caching, and the first query, which takes 50 minutes, it takes 50 minutes. The second one will take 50 milliseconds because the control node will just simply return you the result. The query, of course, has to be exactly the same, blah, blah, blah. For querying, this is the killer feature. I want this on SQL Server and Azure SQL Database as well. Absolutely. You can view the space you use up to 1 terabyte. You can do a lot of stuff. So no time, I'm just starting to shut down, but I would just say that if you run a query, you can monitor it on Synapse Analytics just by including a label. And for debugging and troubleshooting, this is wonderful, like a marvelous feature. Yes.
We have 2 questions here. One
Go
from
ahead.
Tom, asking Ali what, and other from Roman. Question about how suitable Azure Synapse Analytics is for a combined workload. for example, one of full load of data sets around 50 terabytes, and then very small increments coming through in a parallel way quite frequently.
That's cool. It's absolutely fine. It's very well suited. It's not suited for when you have like over 128 connections at the same time. If I would have a time, and I'm sorry because we're like 1 minute, we're finalizing. This is a normal scenario. If you're loading 50 terabytes of data in increment with just a couple of hundreds gigabytes per day, you will be absolutely fine. Okay, just let me finish that. Just show you the information. You have the different kind of classes. There are different scenarios for processing, and you have right now a very cool resource governing system with classifier and work groups and total isolation of your workloads, like a resource governor on Azure on SQL Server, not on Azure SQL database yet. So thank you very much. More questions, please fire away.
Thank you so much, Niko. Great session. A lot of people are mentioning good session. Thank you so much. Now Thiago is back.
Yeah, Thiago was always here.
Guess who's back? It's Tubas.
So thank you very much, Niko. It was a great session. Thank you to Tubas, okay, for taking up with Niko. It's not easy, we know that. See, no, you have to drop the chair, mate, or it doesn't count. Okay. But basically now it was an awesome session. Okay.